Thank you, Stephanie. I knew we were twins and we grew up exactly the same, but I just didn't know how close it was. And I got to say that when you talked about the closet I never opened as a business, I was like, what a great name. What a great idea. I'll put in my dollar, and now all you need is 999,999 more people to do the same, and we're set.
Well, thank you for that encouragement. In my spare time, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, I'm sure you have so much spare time. And you know what? I'll start off by answering your question, Stephanie, on Shark Tank, which, by the way, is Friday nights on ABC. You know, when people come on there and pitch, in real life, those deals can go on for 60, 90 minutes. And it really, really gets intense. But one of the things that's always important to me, when someone comes on and makes a claim, because there are millions and millions and millions of people that are going to be watching this worldwide, as a matter of fact, I don't want people to watch this and then immediately go to their website and buy it if I think it's questionable. And I don't have to know the science, and this applies to all businesses that I look at, and when anybody evaluates a business proposition, I don't necessarily have to know all the science to ask basic questions to see if they know their science, you know, and to know if they took steps to get qualifiers or get support from external sources. Because what typically happens, and this happens in a lot of pitches, they'll reference some sort of research study that wasn't specific to what they're doing, like a hangover cure. They'll say that this ingredient, I'm making this up, magnesium, has been proven to do A, B, and C. Well, that doesn't mean magnesium being proven to do A, B, and C will do D, E, and F as a hangover cure. And so I always try to make sure that I question these folks because, you know, they misuse science, and to me, that's really wrong. And they make claims that can be misleading and even injurious, and to me, that's really wrong. So when you see someone come on Shark Tank with a supplement pitch, my eyes light up because I get really, really excited to question them because, you know, as an entrepreneur, that's part of what we do. We question, right? We question, why are we doing it this way? We question, why aren't we doing it a different way? You know, why isn't there a better way? You know, I like to use Elon Musk as an example. You know, when I sat in a Tesla for the first time, and all of a sudden there were all these things that were happening automatically. You know, it went to presets. You know, there was digital technology throughout the console. You know, I could do all these different things. It automatically raised or lowered the height of the car. You know, when I approached it, the door handles automatically popped out, and I don't need to carry my keys. All these little things that made the experience so much simpler. And to me, that's what great entrepreneurs do. You know, Jeff Bezos calls it, you know, the first day. You know, you have to look at your business or look at the company that you're starting and ask yourself, if this is my first day in creating this company, how would I approach things? How would I do things? If I were going to recreate this industry, how would I start? Because way too often, we as entrepreneurs get caught up and we get confused between what's a feature and what's a product. You know, are we doing something that's just a little bit better that can be incorporated somewhere else? Or is this a reason to do things completely differently? So, you know, with that as a starter, I wanted to talk just a little bit about just the entrepreneurial approach that I take. And then we can open up for questions because I know no one wants to hear me blather on for 30 minutes. You know, as an entrepreneur, Steve Jobs, you said you like quotes, Stephanie. One of my favorite quotes is that Steve Jobs brought up. He said, everything's a remix. And that really stuck with me way back when, because I'm somebody who really likes to learn. You know, my friends, my family would call me a sponge because I just love to read. I like to watch whatever I can that educates me. And the more I do that, the more exposure I get to different things. And as entrepreneurs, that's really what we want to do. We want to get exposed to as many different things as we can to get to the point where we say, wow, I think I can do this in a different way. Because that's what being an entrepreneur is all about. Doing something in a way that solves a problem or makes people realize that you're giving them a product or service that they now know that they need because of you. And that's where I always got started. So I'll give you the perfect example. When I was in my 20s, I was working for a software store, and it was in Dallas on Oak Lawn. It was one of the first retail PC software stores in Dallas. And when people would come in, they really didn't know what that software, what they wanted, right? Because PCs were new. And so I had to take the time to understand all these different pieces of PC software. And then I had to take the time to learn about the businesses of my potential customers and try to make the two interlock. And as I was doing that and getting smarter and learning these things, I realized that when it comes to technology, that there are basically two types of people in the world. There are the people who created the technology, and then there's everybody else. And when it came to learning new software, technology, whatever it may be, that if I put in more time than all the other people, I might not be able to catch up to the inventor of the software, the developer of the software, the inventor of the technology. But if I work real hard, I can get real close. And if I did that on a lot of different elements of that technology, because everything's a remix, I'm going to be able to put things together in a different way and maybe create something that allows me to create a new product. And so fast forward 9 months into my career as a software salesperson, I got fired. This was a retail store, and some of my responsibilities were opening up the retail shop, cleaning the windows and sweeping the floor and make sure we were open on time. And one day I had a customer who wanted to close a deal. And to give you some context of how important that deal was to me, I was living in the Village, and if you know, a big apartment complex in Dallas, living 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment. I didn't have a bed. I didn't have a room. I didn't have a closet. I had a pile. And so for me to close this deal meant I can move out of the Hill Hotel. That's what we called this mess we lived in. Because I was going to make a $1,500 commission, which was more than I had made, in a year plus. And so I made the executive decision to go out and close that deal, thinking when I picked up the check and I took it back to my boss, he would say, "Oh, great," because I knew the store needed the business. Fired me on the spot. And so there I was. And you talk about everything being a remix. I started to realize that these companies that were coming to me didn't know what to ask for, but if I started going to them and took the time to understand their businesses, I could proactively present to them the things that could give them a competitive advantage and use this new technology called PCs. It's crazy to think about it now, but there was a time when PCs were new. There was a time when spreadsheets cost $495. And I took that education and I went to my very first customer, and it's a company called Architectural Lighting. And I told him, I said, "Look, I'm sleeping on the floor. I'm broke. I have nothing, but I know I can help you. And if you'll front me the $500 to buy the software that I need to sell to you, that you need as a company, I promise you that I'll make it work. And if I can, I'll walk your dog. I'll wash your car. It doesn't matter." Long story short, they fronted me the money to buy the software. It worked. That turned in more and more customers. But every step of the way, what I really tried to push for was to use that, the people who's created and everybody else, and really learn and really take that knowledge. And very quickly, I was able to realize that there was nobody out there connecting PCs together in local area networks. Again, no big deal today. But I remember walking into companies and saying, let's connect these together. You connect your printer, this and that. They're like, why do I need to do that? Things that are commonplace. And since then, the many, many years since then, that whole process hasn't really changed. The technology evolves, and we know with certainty that there's going to be new changes and new technology. But the point being, if you have any entrepreneurial desires at all, once you make the effort to learn, once you make the effort to keep up, and you keep on pushing forward with that knowledge and learning more and more, and you start exposing yourself to different businesses and different opportunities, that entrepreneur in you can come out. And that opportunity to create a business will be there in front of you. And a lot of people ask, well, how would I know? Trust me, you know. You see something and you say, wow, I can do it not just better, but much better, or I can do it differently and change the game. That's always the biggest thing that gets the best results. But then you have to ask yourself, are you prepared to do that? And when you see the opportunity and you know the industry, you know the technology, you know the opportunity, that's when you start to really get that confidence. And that's when it's time to start and go. And look, there's going to be times when you see there's an opportunity and you're not quite sure how to get there. And you have to try to determine if you can figure it out. Going back, it's been 25 years now. When I was about 10, no, just kidding. 25 years ago, I remember sitting with my friend Todd Wagner, and we were in California Pizza Kitchen. And he was talking about, it would be great. I went to Indiana University. If we can listen to Indiana basketball over this new thing called the internet. And I'm like, that's a really good idea. And literally, it was at that moment we decided to create the streaming industry, because the internet was so nascent. Nobody was there were some little experimental educational things, but as a business, nobody was putting audio over the internet. And so in the second bedroom of my house on an old Packard Bell computer, we started figuring out how to use Sun file formats, FTS, all these different things to try to transfer audio. But more importantly, we figured out how to turn it into a business and started going out there and getting all these radio stations. And then we added video and TV stations and turned that into a company that went public, that we sold. And that literally was the start of the streaming industry. And the point being that, it wasn't like I planned, hey, let's do something called streaming, because it wasn't even called streaming then. But when you see an opportunity, if you then realize that if you put in the work, you can fulfill that opportunity and turn it into a company, amazing things can happen. So I want all of you that have that entrepreneurial edge, you can make it happen. And you'll know when you're prepared, when that preparation, that knowledge meets that opportunity that you have, you're going to get that feeling in your stomach. And anybody who's thought about starting a company has gotten it. You have that idea, and then you go online and you do a search and you think, oh, nobody's done this before. This must be a great idea. Then you talk to your friends or family or colleagues and they say, oh, that's a good idea. And then you have to make that decision. Should I start that company? What do I do next? And that next always starts with that first step. And you have to ask yourself, why not me? Why can't I be the one to create this company? Why can't I be the one to be successful? And you just never know until you try. Typically, the only thing that can hold you back, and I'll add one more thing and then I'll go to questions. Often, particularly today, people think, well, if I'm starting a business, I have to go to raise money. No. Raising money is not an accomplishment. Raising money is an obligation. You go on Shark Tank, you think after we write them a check, or you watch Shark Tank, you think after we write them a check, we just say, take the money, go do whatever you want? No, we want a return on our investment. The best businesses are the ones started with sweat equity. Now you have to work a little bit harder typically. You have to be a little bit more original and creative and agile. But you know what? The reality, Stephanie asked a question, why is she not a billionaire and why am I? I'm sure Stephanie's on her way and close. But one of the reasons I was able to get to this crazy level is that I was able to retain, when we talked about that starting that streaming company, I was able to retain my equity because we started cheap. We started really, really cheap, and literally taking the PC I had in the second bedroom of my house and trying to figure out from there. We didn't raise money until after we got big, and we didn't have to sell much of the company. So if you can find a way to start with your sweat equity, the upside is always so much bigger, and the reward is just so much greater. So with that, I see I've got a bunch of questions, and let me go through them. How would we track the problem of having? Okay, so what is the best advice for young first-time entrepreneurs? Like Stephanie, I started my first business when I was 12, and it was selling garbage bags door to door. Alexa, off. Ambient voice. And my first company was selling garbage bags door to door. Now, how does a kid sell garbage bags door to door, and how does that come to fruition? That's a longer story. But what I learned was when you're 12 years old and you walk up to your neighbor's house and you say, "Hi, I'm your neighbor, Mark. Do you use garbage bags? Would you like to buy 100 garbage bags from me for $6? They cost me $3. I'll deliver them every week, or whenever you call me, I'll just show up with your garbage bags." Imagine a 12-year-old version of this. Who's going to say no? And the same applies for any young entrepreneur. You know, you have a couple advantages when you're young. One, you don't know what you don't know. Two, people want to do business with you. They want to support young entrepreneurs. Three, you've got all the time in the world, particularly hopefully in the summers, on weekends. So you have the time to try to start things. Four, you can try any number of different things. I had somebody come up to me one day and say, "Oh, we watched Shark Tank, and my family, my kids in particular, they love watching Shark Tank. And by the way, we learned so much from you that my daughter, I think it was, started a slime business." I'm like, and I knew what slime is because my son was 9 at the time, he's 11 now. And like, you sold slime, or he sold slime? And she was like, "Yeah, we sold $100,000 worth of slime." I'm like, how does any kid, and 11, 12-year-old kid, sell $100,000 worth of slime? They made slime, and they went to their neighbors, and they sold it. And that's no different than any product or service idea that you come up with. Whether I had somebody that just emailed me the other day. They live in Canada, where it snows a lot where they're at. And he said, "Mark, I watched Shark Tank, and I started off with a route where I went to people and I said, for $500, I'll shovel your snow every time. I'll shovel the snow in your driveway every time it snows. Not just one time, like $10 or $20 to shovel. No, $500 for the whole winter, whenever that was for them, and I'll make sure your driveway is shoveled." He started getting people say yes, 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 yes. I mean, this is, late teenage, 18, 19-year-old kid. And by the end of the first winter, he said he had like 5,000 people signed up. By the end of his fourth or fifth, I don't remember which winter it was, literally, this is the honest to goodness truth. He just, he sent me a follow-up, $40 million in sales and receipts. Now, that's a lot of driveways to shovel, and he actually created a whole service with a whole slew of people, including some robotics, where it made it easier. So he knew how to measure the depth of the snow, and he already knew the size of the driveway and sidewalk. And so he knew he could calculate what type of device would best work where. Now he has this crazy business, and he was asking me advice on how to expand it into other markets. He was only in one market in Canada. Now, obviously, it was a bigger city, but imagine that. Seriously. Starting off with the idea of not just shoveling driveways like everybody's always done for generations, but charging a one-time fee for the entire winter, and then figuring out over the course of several winters how to make money, and then turn it into an enormous business and make a ton of money. I mean, it was the craziest thing I ever read. It made me realize I wasn't as smart a 12-year-old as I thought I was, but it was just crazy. And the moral of the story is, there are so many great ideas out there, so many. It doesn't matter how old you are. And the most valuable thing you have to sell is your ingenuity and your time. And if you're able to find a way to sell your time for more than you think it's worth, you're gonna find a way to be successful. And so if somebody can start off, with shoveling a driveway business and turn it into $40 million in sales and deposits, who knows what you can do? So that's one great example. Next question is, how should we tackle the problem of hiring a good team? In a nutshell, you want to hire slow and fire fast. Very, very often we get caught up, particularly as a company is growing, and we try to rush in hiring. And on one hand, we'll find a hole that we have, and we think, well, we'll just hire somebody, and because we'll think that they're the best at doing this, that person will be really great at their job, and all our problems will be solved. It just doesn't work that way. The way I try to hire a good team, and look, I've done it right and I've done it wrong, so I've learned a lot from my mistakes, is early on in a business, I always try to get somebody that I trust, that will come in and work at a price that I can afford, but will work very closely with me, and try to get a sense of how good that person will be for the company. Because, you know, if you only have yourself or 2 or 5 or 10 employees, then you want to, you anticipate growing, you want to start building what I call bench strength. You want to bring somebody in that you can trust and train. And you don't want to just bring in the first person that you know, but you want to go through a whole realm of people. And you want to make sure that there's 2 things for sure in that first person that you hired that you potentially want to grow into a management position. Number 1, they're smarter than you. And number 2, they're nothing like you. I'm kind of a ready, fire, aim person. If you see behind me, it's a little bit sloppy. I always try to hire somebody that's really anal, really persnickety, really, you know, precise in everything they do and detail oriented, because obviously I'm not. And in doing so, you know, sometimes you still make mistakes, but if when you make a mistake, you cut that mistake quickly, because we sometimes will hold on too long to somebody we hire, then you get one person that you can start delegating to. And then if you do that same thing over again as you're growing, then you get another person. And so then you start developing a team of people that you trust, that you can delegate greater and greater responsibility. So that's one thing for growing companies. The second thing is, if you've got a larger organization, there's a couple things you have to be, particularly now during this pandemic. You got to be honest. You know, you can't spin a pandemic, no matter how good a spin master you are. So you have to, you know, you have to admit, like I have, like we all are, that we're afraid, that we're uncertain. You have to be authentic. You know, you can't try to be somebody that you're not. You know, you have to listen, because everybody's afraid. And when you listen to the people that work for you, you know, during a pandemic, and you hear their fears, or during great times, because they're closest to your customers more often than not, and they're hearing and seeing things that you don't. But when you listen from the bottom up, you learn so many things and get so many ideas, because you hear from people who are in different communities than you belong to, that look differently than you, that sound differently than you, that they're going to tell you things that are not intuitive to you. And so by listening, then great things happen. And then finally, every entrepreneur, every CEO has got to have a vision for their company, and where you want the company to be, how you want it to get there. But you also have to be able to convey that vision to those people in a manner that coincides and aligns with their personal goals. You know, and it may be, if you're 1,000 people working that way with your managers, or 1 tier deep or 2 tiers deep, but and conveying to them how to do the same thing, or if you're a 20-person company doing this individually. But when your vision and talking to the people that work for you align, and you understand what their personal goals are, and you can make their personal goals, or find a way for your vision to align with their personal goals, that's when the magic happens. That's when everybody's on the same page and understands why you're doing what you're doing, and why you're trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And that's how every business that I've had that's grown has grown dramatically. And the businesses where I've had challenges, that's been where there's been a lack of alignment, and that's where we've really run into trouble. Let's see what else we got here. What have I actively done to lift entrepreneurs from minority populations comes in? That's a great question. And there's really 2 parts to that. I've invested in VCs that are people of color. I've invested in CEOs. I've invested in a lot of different companies, because it's important to me. And if you want to see, we actually have them listed. If you go to markcuban.com, I list, you know, minority owned, women owned, military owned or operated. And so, because that's important to me. But part 2 to this is, you know, one of the best ways to find opportunity is to go and look where other people are not. And it's an absolute fact that, you know, people in disadvantaged communities aren't being scouted, if you will. They're not in a position where they're working with entrepreneurs or being mentored or have access to financial education or business education as much as in privileged communities. And while that's a problem, and we certainly need to improve the education and business education and secondary and post-secondary education opportunities like UTD is doing quite a bit of, we also need to start looking and talking to people and finding out ways, not necessarily to have them fit into our models, but to look for ways that they can sell within the communities that they're in. I don't know. I literally have never, this guy who shovels snow, I don't know if he's white, black, orange, or yellow, but I know that he sold to his community first. There's another gentleman that came on Shark Tank, Noel Doherty, and he has a product called Twisted Up. For African Americans, they'll know what a natural is, and to fix up your natural, they've historically used sponges. Well, Noel came up with a thing that looks like a little tennis racket that allows you to twist up your natural, and he started selling these things at $29.95 and sold them in his community, grew enough to come on Shark Tank. Now he's killing it. He's got influencers, he's on, online, he's on social media, and his product, he's sold millions of dollars worth, and it's been a great investment for me. And now he's taken the money that he's made and is investing in minority entrepreneurs as well. And the point there is, too often we say, okay, well, let's send money there and find somebody people will come to us that are from disadvantaged communities that have these ideas, and they'll try to step into our world and sell and that's really a terrible thing to say, in our world, but step out of their community and try to fit into the way that the VCs have set things up. And these traditional VCs, angel and seed investors, isn't designed to work with people that aren't doing business plans like all the other thousands and millions of business plans we've already seen. What the greater opportunity, like Noel, like this gentleman with the snow, the shoveling, is to go into their communities and help them build businesses there, because there's so many more things that can happen there. And by working with them and mentoring them and accelerating those businesses, they can grow those businesses, get a lot of great business experience, and then expand into something else or invest into other people in that community, just like Noel did. And to me, building from the bottom up or building from the community up really is going to have more of an impact than trying to get all these people to create business plans and come into a traditional VC or investment environment, because there's so many, the way that world tries to evaluate businesses versus the people that are trying to create the business, there's so many disconnects. And that's why there's so much, so little investment in people of color. And it's really unfortunate, but I think we need to help them. We need to help people build businesses in those disadvantaged communities, mentor them as they grow those businesses, because teaching is such a great experience and teacher. So building those businesses is such a great teacher and experience, then they can grow and go from there. So that's a long-winded answer to a great and complicated question. So next question was on esports. Your question was, with COVID-19 and work from home being in our foreseeable future, hopefully not too far into the foreseeable future, has your opinion on investing in esports changed? The industry has been thriving in 2020. Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm a fan of esports. I think it's a real sport. I tried to play League of Legends. I suck, but it's hard. And it takes manual dexterity. It's 5-level chess, and it happens in milliseconds. But at the same time, as a business, I think people conflate what's happening in Asia and the rest of the world versus what they hope to have happen here in the United States. Here in the United States, esports participation is growing, but the business of esports teams has kind of evolved from being about the esports to being about brands. So when you look at Fnatic, when you look at FaZe Clan, and you look at what they're doing, you know about Banks, you know about Rug, you know about all the different people on there, and they're all brands. But when you look at their teams Their teams really are just a platform to enhance their brands, enhance their merchandise sales, enhance their sponsorships. The actual team operation as an esport isn't doing all that good. So that's one problem I've had. The second problem that I hate when it comes to esports is messing with the meta, right? Imagine if in basketball, if all of a sudden, 10 games into the season, we changed the rules. And it made the rules change were so dramatic that instead of Luka being a great point guard, Luka had to do A, B, and C, and that just made it so he wasn't effective at what he was doing. And now Luka has to practice 10 hours a day just to learn all the meta changes to try to be great at basketball. Not that Luka wouldn't be great at everything, but those are the types of things that happen in esports. And to me, that creates a real challenge for the industry. And then finally, the fact that the publishers control everything and they can change the rules whenever they want and change the sport, that makes it more difficult as well. So while I think esports on a macro basis will grow based off of participation, I'm not sold that teams are a good business. All right, let's do one or two more. What is my most fabulous failure that may have turned later into a success? So there's a company called Uber, and the founder was a guy named Travis Kalanick, who had a company called Red Swoosh. Guess who the investor was in Red Swoosh? Guess who his mentor was? Guess who helped him build Red Swoosh? And though he gets credit for making the sale, he did sell the company. And a couple years later, I get an email from Travis, hey, I've got this thing called Uber Cab. What do you think? And I'm like, it's a great idea. I love it. You're going to have problems with the taxi cab commissions. And I went all Shark Tank on him. And I said, your valuation's too high. Come back to me and with something more reasonable. Never came back to me. I could have been one of the first 3 investors in Uber. It happens. Stuff happens, right? You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. It's okay. Okay, one more. And then what's my outlooks for startups and entrepreneurship in 2021? Phenomenal, right? Personally, I'm a big believer in the vaccine. I know some people associated with it. They're very confident in that. And so I think as we get into spring and then summer, the snapback of people wanting to go outside and do things is going to be off the charts incredible. And there's going to be a whole lot of people who come up with great ideas, better ways to respond to the circumstances in the pandemic, better ways to work from home, better digital approaches to everything that we're doing online with the increased demand online, and better live events approaches as we snap back with the vaccine. And because of all those things, I think when we look back in 10 years, when we look back at the pandemic of 2020, we're going to realize that there were 5, 10, 20 world-class companies, if not more, that were created during that pandemic because someone had ideas that they came up with. Probably somebody from UTD. So UTD, thank you for having me on. RA, I'm going to toss it back to you. Take over from here. Thank you, everybody.